Hi, I'm Dr. Phil Bennett, and I coach people on how to move forward from places where they find themselves stuck. Understanding how our brains work can restore some sanity to our processes of change and our attempts to change. So first, let's explore why change can be difficult. Your mind has a flow of energy. Think of it as a current, like a river flowing. The energy in your brain is always going somewhere. So for example, when you're young, in math you learned 2 plus 2 equals 4. And then over the years you added skills to that, so you keep developing this. This growth requires that your energy be directed toward there. So think of something you're really good at and getting better at because you focus the flow of your energy on this improvement project. Even a naturally gifted athlete can't compete well without practice, exercise, strength training, that kind of thing. They spend hours and hours focusing the flow of their mind and body's energy toward these goals. So where we direct the flow of our energy determines what we become good at. Think again of someone who's good at math and science. I've worked with a lot of engineers over the years, and they've often excelled in their careers, but they sought me out because they wanted to be coached in some of their relational struggles. Not because they didn't have natural wiring, brain hardware, there was something fundamentally wrong with them, but just over the years of their life, they had poured all their energy toward these categories instead of the relational categories. I won't go into detail here about left and right hemispheres, but through coaching, these engineers who were very left brain began to strengthen their right brain, their right hemispheres, that had to do with relational attunement, emotional awareness, all those kinds of things that really they had been weak at because of where their energy was directed as adolescents as they grew up. So we strengthened the areas that made them weak, their stories had not encouraged growth in, and they balanced out, improved in their ability to form strong emotional attachments. So if we want to change, we have to redirect the flow of our brain's energy. Here's what happens in simple terms with this. There's a thing called Hebb's axiom, which states that neurons that fire together wire together. One cell might be triggered, it fires, connects with another one, and so on and so forth. With repeated firing, those form a network. As the network gets stronger and stronger, and more efficient, that happens because of repetition. So think of anything you did or you're good at that you've done with repetition. That's how things established for you as well. You became fast and efficient at math, at skiing, at anything. This process has worked in a lot of ways in your life, in a lot of positive ways already. The formation of networks is why you can drive a car without really thinking about it, ride a bike, sculpt, paint. Think of anything that you feel like you're really good at, efficient at. That's how that occurred. But now think about how this might work in a contrary manner as well with something you want to change in your life. So lots of images can help us visualize this, but picture again a river and a flow of current. The water flowing over time deepens grooves until you get something like the Grand Canyon. Once a network has been repeatedly used, resisting the flow of that energy takes more and more effort. So we create something that kind of resembles the Grand Canyon in terms of the way our energy flows in our brains with some of these things, deepening the grooves, and it gets harder to fight. This image can help us understand why change is hard, but change is also so possible. And there's two basic reasons for this. One is the growth we're kind of referring to earlier, but the second one has to do with decay. Let's explore how decay can occur as well. So I love mountain biking, and I've been mountain biking since the 80s. And after a winter, when I've maybe been indoor rowing, spinning, those kinds of things, when I haven't been on my bike, I have to start in some ways all over again with technical skills. I lose those skills over time because I'm not doing them. My body's activated in a completely different way in the winter, and improvement in my mountain biking requires that I again redirect the energy flow of my brain in these directions. So over time, as we do things, they become easier and easier. Our minds and bodies are remembering how to do things, and that's the growth side of change. The deepening of grooves represents why change is hard, as well as why repetition also increases the thinking and behaviors in our brain that we might want. But Decay is also why change is possible. So the term apoptosis refers to cell death and indicates why we lose natural abilities and things too when networks aren't being activated. Decay occurs. So have you ever broken a bone or been in a cast for a period of time? A few years ago, I shattered an ankle mountain biking, and over the months of surgery, the cast, all that kind of thing, the decay was obvious to the natural eye after those months had gone by. The decay also occurs in our brain networks. Brain networks also decay with lack of use, even if we're brilliant. So my oldest son took the ACT years ago, and he missed the highest score by 1 point, all right? What brought his grade down? Geometry. He had taken geometry 2 or 3 years before and hadn't used it since, and that brought his score down. Apoptosis, or cell death, occurs in everyone, even the young and the brilliant. It's just the way our bodies work, and we can harness that for positive things as well. We can harness this physiology to work for us. So growth and decay are the two natural processes we put to work when we're trying to change. Decay is not only a bad thing, it's helpful, and it helps us eliminate the behaviors we want to get rid of. As we stay off old networks, these networks slowly decay and fall apart. Picture a place in life where you feel stuck. Somewhere in life you set up a network that formed your unique struggle that you have now. And once this network may have even been helpful, it got triggered, those grooves deepened, it was helpful in your life, but at some point it maybe turned from a survival skill into a hindering skill. Okay, if you're watching this, probably you've got some hindering skills, if you want to call them that, in your life that you're trying to eliminate. They're not helpful anymore. It's a place in your life that you're struggling and desiring to change. Change is all about our neural networks and learning how to stay off these networks that we don't want to be on, as well as creating the new alternative networks that we desire. Let's take a look at a pattern in my life that was worthy of change. It helped me survive and then became a problem over the years. It fits under the larger category of learned helplessness. This term was first used by a psychologist years ago. He was looking at learning in dogs, and he grabbed some dogs from a collie because he didn't have enough for his own. He wanted to explore learning, and he would have a bell or a light go off, and then a shock would come. The dogs were allowed to escape, but there were some that didn't seem to learn that they could escape. He showed them that they could. He might put their paws up on the edge of the wall, show them they could jump over. He might lift them up and set them down on the other side. But these dogs would still just lay down and take the shock. Unclear why. He went to his colleague and talked about what was happening in his experiment. His colleague noted that these were the dogs he had loaned to him, and in his previous experiment that he had just done, there was no escape for the dogs. There was no escape from the shock. So they had learned no escape, and now their brain was struggling to learn something else. So they had learned helplessness, and now they were struggling to unlearn it. You may have your own form of learned helplessness in life. Here's how a pattern of learned helplessness developed in mine. When I was a kid, growing up, my dad was angry, and working with him was very unpleasant. I might be out in the heat or the cold, working in a car, doing construction, that kind of thing. And I wanted to escape the discomfort. I did not like it. I'm a kid. This is no fun. But even more than the pain of the environment was my dad's anger. I hated my dad's anger. And since Dad was the only one who was really allowed to get angry, my anger would only escalate him, and standing up for myself didn't seem like a good option. My young brain was looking at the limited options I could figure out, and I chose escape. Dad, are we done? Can I go? Can I be done? Can one of my sisters come and help? Whatever. I just wanted to get away from the unpleasantness. Now, this part was different from the dogs. I didn't try to escape, obviously, but I had a physical, relational, and emotional discomfort that my young brain saw only one path forward from, and that was escape, a survival mechanism on my part. But I learned through these early choices and not to fight, to change my difficult relational circumstances. My form of learned helplessness was not this escaping the context, but learning that I could actually transform my relational emotional struggles. I learned helplessness with transforming the relational situation. Those things became ingrained in my brain, in my body, into the very physiology of my being. They formed extensive neural networks that over time, with repeated firing, they became very efficient or superhighways in my brain. Trying to resist them later in life became like trying to resist water remaining out of the Grand Canyon, and haunted my life. So the survival mechanisms of my childhood imprisoned me as an adult in situations where learning to escape was no longer adaptive. Change is hard, and the Grand Canyon is a great image for exploring the difficulty of change. Multiple things in our environments and our physiology can trigger these old networks, these things from our childhood, and then like water being pulled into the deepest grooves, we can struggle to live out anything other than these old patterns. But I coach because I believe that we can be released from these old networks. Neuroscience tells us that change is possible, so now let's consider another image for growth. I like the image of roads. Think of your brain as having jungle pathways, undeveloped connections, and superhighways, things you do really well and efficiently. Your brain has all these, and we're trying to create a new road in your brain for a new behavior, thinking pattern that you want. So instead of using established roads, we're essentially hacking our way through the jungle, creating a new way of thinking, of being, of behaving. It's like taking a machete and hacking. It's hard, sweaty work. Now imagine what happens if you don't get back on that road, that path with your machete for 3 weeks. That difficult to find pathway disappears again, versus day after day getting on it, it turns into a single track, a packed, broader path, and maybe one day a dirt road, all right? The grooves deepen when we do that, right? Is the other imagery, and one day it's like the Grand Canyon, it's now only in a direction that's helpful instead of unhelpful. But this development is long, the journey's hard, and we can be tempted to get off, especially when life hits us. So think of the stresses or storms in life as being like bad weather that comes in and turns the road to mud. You struggle to find grip and traction, maybe loss, a transition, something in your life. The weather's turned crappy, and this established dirt road is now really hard to stay on, so tempting to go and get back on that other road because grabbing traction on this road feels impossible. So we just want to head back to those old superhighways. Fortunately, your brain can take these, through the physiology and the way we are, can take these dirt roads and transform them also into paved roads. It's a process called myelination, and with multiple repeated firings of a network, that's what happens is these networks become myelinated, they become more efficient, just like paving a road. Repetition and usage make that jungle pathway into a new road in our brain, and again, one day maybe into a superhighway in our brain. Fast and efficient ways to get to where we want to go, but until then, we've got a jungle pathway versus superhighway. Easy choice sometimes, so we get stuck. We're trying to those roads are competing with each other. We can create these new roads, our brains can change, but it takes consistent new stimulation in order to be able to do that and stay off those old networks. That's the hard work of change. Growth plus decay is what brings about change in our lives. Out of the hundreds of people I've worked with over the years, the ones who change are the ones who are invested. They do the hard work of hacking out that new road, as well as the hard work of staying off that superhighway that can be so easy to hop back on. As someone said years ago, we can rake for leaves or dig for diamonds, but digging is hard work. And you picture the digging, dirty, messy, add the rain to it, just not good, right? But neuroscience tells us that we can change. Change is possible. And so through the hard work of coaching, that's what I do with people, is help them navigate these changes, creating new networks, behaviors they want, staying off those old networks, learning how to do that so that this shift can take place in their lives. They can find themselves successful and happy, and I'd love to do that with you too. So if you'd like to chat, give me a call, send me a text, an email. I'd love to connect. Take care.